is a former BBC Breakfast TV expert on happiness and author of the book and Oracle card deck for Men, Rights of Man. And today he's going to be speaking on synchronicities and signs. Okay, a big welcome to Ian Lynch.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a real honour and privilege to be here in Glastonbury to share with you this talk that came about because of a cup of coffee, quite frankly. And that set aside the events that have led to me standing here in front of you giving this talk today. I was just minding my own business. In fact, I was doing something I love to do, which is look at the clouds. And when I see a particularly unusual cloud pattern that takes my breath away, if I have the space and time and I'm not driving, I like to take a photograph. And I saw this wonderful cloud formation, and it was close to a petrol station, and I needed to get some fuel. So I stopped to fuel up, and I then went to get a cup of coffee. And as I'd ordered my coffee, it's one of these places where you order and you I think it was Wild Bean Cafe to give it its name. I went to stand and collect it. I got my extra hot coffee with oat milk, and I'm stood there waiting. And then this lady next in line has just ordered her coffee, and she's just standing next to me. And I caught her eye, and I smiled, and I thought, well, that's an interesting emblem she's wearing around her neck. So I just happened to say, that's a very nice necklace. And she smiled and she said, do you know what it is? And I said, yes, I think I do. And she laughed and we smiled and we got talking. And this, in a way, has been alluded to today. This conference. In it are people. And people are fascinating. We all have connections. And without getting all sort of Celestine prophecy-like, it's amazing when you strike up a conversation how there can be a connection. So we started talking, and I'm looking at this lovely lady here who's been a long time regular at this conference, and we started talking about just life and really what we're doing, having a cup of coffee as much as the pentagram and everything else. And she was going to look, I believe, at a stone, at a barrow, an old long barrow or circle. And I suppose I uttered something that you don't necessarily hear every day. I said, oh, that's interesting. I actually helped to create a modern-day stone circle, which surprised her. And that created the bond. And from that come to the Glastonbury Symposium. So I came along last year, my first time to the symposium. And I absolutely enjoyed it, loved it. As Sally rightly said, it was right up my alley. I met some interesting people along the way. And then, as those of you know, at the end of the symposium, we go off to the Abbey. So the meditation, and I did meditate, by the way, because I know I've taken that photograph, but I did have my eyes shut, honestly, and I did. But I did sneak a little photograph in, and I was just minding my own business when I turned round, and there was Andy Thomas, and I'd obviously known he was the organizer of the conference, and I wasn't trying to do anything other than just have a conversation. I wasn't after coming to speak here at all, but I was just talking to Andy, and he asked me a few things, and I mentioned the Stone Circle, I mentioned a book I'd written, and he said, well, perhaps you could come and talk to the conference, to the symposium. And for reasons that will become apparent through the course of this, I thought, oh my God, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether I'm up for that, to be honest. But I said, maybe I'll send you something. And I didn't. I sat on it, and time went by all the way until February. And then I received an email. Would you still consider coming to talk at the symposium? Now, at that point, I don't know about you, but when something's happened again, you know that maybe you've got to say yes. It's a sign. And that got me thinking. It was serendipitous, there was a synchronicity, and I had to say yes. But what to talk about? So then I thought, well, hang on a second. This is a synchronicity. And the whole way that the stone circle came about was by a series of synchronicities that I'm going to share with you today. But more than that, I want to talk about patterns, our own patterns, and I want to hear from you too a little later on. So thinking about moments in your life that have been pivotal, that have changed your life, even a small conversation, a validation, a sign. For me, clouds are signs. At the time of growing up as a little boy, from starting off as a little boy, I used to smile a lot. And I was quite happy from within. And as I grew up, I kept smiling. In fact, about this age, I got told off for being a Cheshire cat. Stop smiling. Stop smiling. Why are you smiling? Don't know. Just happy. You know, as a kid, do you really necessarily need much of a reason? It's just a feeling. So I was happy. And this has significance later on in my life. As I grew, so did my hair. And as you can see, it was curly then. It's waved goodbye. And thankfully, I was on a retreat once with Neil Donald Walsh, and he got me to understand, thankfully, we're not our hair. We're not our hair. So I'm still here. My hair isn't. It's sprouted in other places. Some of us might know about that. And it surprisingly wasn't such a big deal. But at the time, as a young man growing up, now, when I was thinking about this and the synchronicities that happened, because I did have an interesting relationship with my father, which I'll come on to a little later, when you say yes to something, like I said yes to Andy, sometimes you can say no and turn down a synchronistic event. And I'll give you a silly example. I used to work in a supermarket called Mac Fisheries. Anyone remember Mac Fisheries? Oh, amazing. Lots of people. Mac Market, the follow-on, when it's sort of rebranded. Well, I worked in those two supermarkets. And two sisters used to work in this supermarket, and they were very striking looking, lots of fun. And I used to talk to them on their way home as well when I was walking home from school around this sort of age. And the two sisters left to go and work at Sainsbury's. It was more money. And this was a sign. This was a sign of something to come. Because fast forward 10 years, I'm laying in bed. It's a Sunday morning. I'm with my girlfriend, so there's a reason for not getting out of bed. And on the radio, there is a competition prize to go and see Bananarama in Singapore. All you have to do is come up with the maiden name of Siobhan in the band, married to Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics. I thought everyone knew that, and I lay there. No, it's not that name. And it went on. And it went on, and I didn't get out of bed, and it went on. And then after about 6 people, I thought, hang on a second. I got out of bed, picked up the phone. Somebody got there first. Somebody got there first, because if I'd have actually realised that this was a gimme, I could have jumped out of bed the first time and said, it's Siobhan Fahey. I used to work in a supermarket with her and talk on the street corner. And I'd have gone to Bangkok. I'd have met up and gone, Siobhan! And she would have remembered, and who knows where it would have taken me. So sometimes in life, we don't take our opportunities, and in some way that stuck in my mind. And so when Andy asked, that's kind of why I came along. Oh, by the way, another little weird synchronicity. That's Uncle Shay, by the way. He's a Lynch. He's a Lynch, and my sister got involved in a book about Che Guevara and his connection. I think it was his father or grandfather was actually a Lynch. And so the hair that I did have, we kind of got that rebellious thing going on. And that's been a good and bad thing throughout my life, that rebel. And in some ways, it's inspired some of this. So where are we going? About, I think it was 1999, I went to a talk by this man. Has anyone heard Julian Cope? Has he been here at all and talked about the Stones?
We've tried.
You've tried.
Never got him in the door yet.
No, what a shame, because he did this rock and roll tour. And I was living north of Milton Keynes, and he came along, all jazzy, all looking like you would expect from The Teardrop Explodes and as a musician, but to talk about this fascinating book. And I had to buy it. I had to buy it because it was an almanac of all the stone circles. And I think the Rollright Stones was the first Stones that had captured my imagination. And, he wrote in this book, Love on Ya, back in 1999. What did I know was going to happen? Nothing at the time. I sat there, loved meeting him, loved the talk on stone circles, which is something that I had been, I suppose, in tune with since the very first moment I touched a stone. At the same time, I went to see this fella. Does anyone know who that is? It's a gentleman called Patch Adams. Now, if you've ever seen the film Patch Adams with Robin Williams, they paid him nothing for that, by the way. He was hoping to get some money to put towards a free hospital, which was his thing. But one of the things, if you investigate a little bit about Patch Adams and what he's been doing for years, is he's been doing clowning. And so he, at the drop of a hat, lifts up his costume and becomes this. And he learnt clowning the hard way. He'd go up in an elevator and come down, and he'd go up and down until he got everybody singing. He would go into the toughest pubs and he would clown, to get reactions and see what was going on. So he learnt his art, and he learnt to get comfortable with humour by doing it the hard way. I went to see this because it was an event put on by the Happiness Project, and I think, if you look, that would be me. And I was just a delegate in an audience like this. I had a particularly nasty experience at this event. The Happiness Project had put this on, and there was, 700 towards 1,000 people in this room. You had to go and hug someone opposite you. And I'm not homophobic, never was, but it was a bloke. My father had never hugged me. I'd never hugged another man in my life. I am 39 at the time, 39 years old, never hugged a guy, and I got a hug. And it was a bloke with long hair. He looked weird, he's a hippie type guy, and I was quite staid in those days, and it was like, oh my God. So I hugged him. I hugged this guy. Just happened to be opposite me. But more of him later. Now, this is where things really start to kick off and how this really started to come about. I went to for those of you who know this, to Sedona in Arizona. It's changed dramatically since those early days. And if you can see in there, can you see the church there? Which is actually quite amazing when you stand in there. The vista is absolutely incredible. And of course, Sedona is known for its vortexes. It is quite a strong energy, to say the least, there. Weird things happen. I've been there many times since, and on the retreat, I had a show put on for me with these clouds that were just giving me information. I know it to be, I feel it to be true, shall we say. And they were showing me life and its changing faces. And I had my first spiritual experience, we say, of something outside of the norm back in when I was about 20, but I did nothing with it. It kind of scared me, and I got to feel a ley line which was life-changing. How many people have actually can feel ley lines in this room? I'm interested. A reasonable amount. It's something else to feel my hand being pushed up into the air. Changes everything when you've had a direct experience. And Sedona kind of touched me, and I saw this incredible show. And then suddenly, out of the bushes came a Navajo man selling his drawings, his crayon drawings onto the rock with a bear on it. It was ridiculous confirmation of what I'd just seen. And it also was a seed. Now, Sedona is absolutely stunning. This is an even better church, in my opinion, than the one that was built there, because it's called Cathedral Rock, for those who know. And this is Red Rocks Crossing. And if you stand there, you are in touch with some mighty force. It's powerful but benevolent. It's mystical, and yet it's solid ground. The water flows, and it is just an invigorating place to be. So I was on this retreat, minding my own business, doing my thing, literally doing my own thing. And the waters, there is a little video here, but it just gives you a feeling of it. But let me see if I can actually play it here. I think I might be able to. Sorry about the black line. I wasn't intending it at the time for a presentation. Not a bad little church, eh? I then did this. I walked a medicine wheel. I'd never done it before. This was brand new to me. And the lady who put on this trip, a wonderful woman called Caroline Reynolds, who was a spiritual mentor in many ways and a teacher who put on these retreats to Sedona and to Arizona and Monument Valley and various places like this, walked us through this medicine wheel. And it was the first time I'd ever done a practice like this too. And again, out of interest, who's done a ritual or a practice in a medicine wheel? Yeah, a few people. It's very powerful, yes? We're into the first segment, and it's about childhood. It's about youth. It's about the early part of our life in the way that Caroline was running this. And I had a vision. I had a vision of being the first time that my father had got violent towards me. I was about 3. I was looking in a rock pool in Middleton-on-Sea, south coast of England, and I didn't want to go. It was just fascinating. I'd never seen anything like this before, my very first rock pool. You know, it's alive, the little fishes. I mean, it's just something else. Still excites me now thinking about it. You know, it's how easy we can get dulled. But I'm not, and I wasn't. And I wouldn't leave. And they wanted to go. And so instead of coercing me, I got dragged across. But I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure whether this was real or not. You know, because it was a vision. Is it just my fantasy, or is this a locked-in memory? And it disturbed me, and we carried on. And around this same period of time in my life, a good friend of mine, in fact, a couple of good friends of mine, have said, you really need to heal your relationship with your father whilst he's still alive. You know, you can do it when he's dead, but it's a lot easier, you know, to heal your wounds when he's alive. And so I made that commitment. And so this was like another affirmation that I really do need to do something about this. But at the same time, apart from knocking the headphone thing off, let me just put that back on. I had a soul reading, and that was also an affirmation. It was an affirmation because it was explaining to me a soul and auric painting, and this is the kind of thing you get in Sedona, of course, and probably Glastonbury too. And when it's done by somebody who's really skilled, you know, it's incredibly powerful. And my father came up, and his father came up. Now, my father had, I would say, frustrations and anxieties, and was Asperger's. Very intelligent man, struggled with communication and relationship. My grandfather, who I only met once, was violent. My father was violent towards me, but not a violent man. And it came up in this reading again that could see what my father had gone through. He had it tougher than I did. And it brought that first sense of being able to do something practical on the healing. So when I got back, I went to see my mum, and I wanted to ask her, is this true? Or I didn't put it like that. I said, I just had this kind of vision the other day, and I just wondered whether it actually is it true? And she said, yes, it was horrible. I asked him to stop, but he wouldn't, and he kept pulling and dragging, and my arm was cut to pieces by his fingers. That's my dad, and I began a process of forgiveness. It touches me now, and in fact, I might as well get this one out of the way. When my father was dying, and he died of prostate cancer, the last thing he ever said to me was, and he was half comatose at the time, he said, "Do you remember that little boy who ran round the holiday cottage, Flint House, into my arms?" And I said, "Yes, Dad, I do." I said, "It was great fun." And he went, "Ah, good." And that was the last words he ever said. And I didn't, because I was kind of in the moment with him, I didn't twig it. But when I sat with it, I realized, oh my God, that was the same holiday where he was first physically abusive to me. And it was like, coming around in a circle. And this is the powerful magic that comes into a place like a medicine wheel that can come out of it. And I was just thinking about this talk and listening to Andy, of course. It's like this amazing thing that is going on. And that is why today for me it's an inquiry as well as a presentation, because I want to hear from you in a little bit too. Because patterns, synchronicities, signs and messages all around us, and they do help shape our lives. And if we listen into them, of course, they can give us great feedback about where we are and what we're going. So I came back to Milton Keynes, and I'd literally been back not even 24 hours, I guess. Well, maybe just slightly over 24 hours. And I go to see a friend of mine who was working on an allotment project. And I was joking, this is like January time. How's it going? Done much? And he said, well, no, not really. I said, yeah, it's a bit of a lame excuse. He said, really? You could have got the spade out. And he said, well, no, because I was actually working on a project to build a medicine wheel in Milton Keynes. And I'm like, what? What? I've just walked one just before I left. It was the last thing we did, closing ceremony, and you're going to build one in Milton Keynes? That's insane. Now, Milton Keynes, it's an odd place, but it's magnificent in its own way. And it's home to a peace pagoda. If you've not seen it, go there. It was kind of twinned with the one at Battersea. And they stand for, it's a Japanese order of monks. I'm going to pronounce it Nipponzan Myoji. And they are for peace against nuclear weapons primarily, and much more besides. And this wonderful pagoda was built in I think it was officially opened in 1980. So this story has some backdrop now. We're going into the coincidences that come in from other people and other places. There was a landscape architect called Neil Higson who was involved in, many of the great works in Milton Keynes, such as the Tree Cathedral and the laying out of various things like a foot maze, which I'll come on to in a moment. The One World Tree was here. So a peace park was beginning to happen around the pagoda. There is the maze, the labyrinth, rather, I should call it. And it is worth visiting. Neil, he was an interesting man. Some people think he was a druid. Maybe he was. Because he was really attuned with the land, working with the Milton Keynes Corporation, who were an odd bunch. But he has a place in this. Around the time, two incredible men came over on two occasions. This is Oren Lyons and Leon Shenandoah. Oren Lyons is the man on the right as you look at it. If you can go on YouTube and you can see an incredible oratory by Oren Lyons, an amazing man, talking about the Six Nation Confederacy, which is what they belong to. He's an Onondaga, an Iroquois, but they are part of this the Six Nations Confederacy, because they were responsible in some ways for the Constitution in America. It has its roots in what they wrote, and there is a beautiful piece that you can listen to and watch with this man. Now, these guys came over to England on 2 occasions. One for a thing called the Sacred Run. Anybody heard of that? America to Moscow, with Milton Keynes in the middle and a few other places. And so they came over. And then something rather strange as well. They were coming over to play lacrosse, and they got stopped. Did anyone hear about it? Remember this? Because they were carrying their own passports, not USA passports, but, Chief Oren Lyons says you can leave the reservation and go traveling. The American government and customs honoured them. They honoured them. But the British customs, no, we're not honouring them. And the American diplomats trying to say, it's okay. But what if they stay? The British, why would you stay? I mean, no offence to Britain. I mean, that's not quite what I meant. But why would you stay when you're living in your own place? And these are chiefs of their nations, Peacemaker, Tadaheo, important people. But it so happened that a lovely lady and her husband, Tom Hancock, rushed around like mad, and they managed to get, these are the people that invented lacrosse. They're over here for a lacrosse tournament. They can't get into the country. But they, thankfully, they got through. And there is a beautiful, beautiful memento of that occasion. This is where it gets quite exciting for me, because if you can, on the right-hand side, I don't know whether you can read. Can you read that? Or is it? This is the daughter of Deirdre, who was then married to Tom, who wrote this just after their visit. And she had this vision of, guess what? A stone circle. Whilst they were over in Milton Keynes area, they went on a walk, and Deirdre at the time, I think, was living in a place called Western Underwood. And Western Underwood has a quarry. And they happened to walk past this quarry, and they stopped at the quarry, and they played their flutes. And they said something that got dismissed at the time. And I'm not going to repeat it because it's a private thing. But they alluded to an act happening, and then they moved on. How odd that when the first drawing came up by Neil Higson, my neighbour, and that is another coincidence. He was the man I used to go drinking with down at the local pub, the Barley Mow, in Cosgrove, just north of Milton Keynes, and we just, we were just talking life in general. I knew what he did, and when I heard about this project, it was like, well, my neighbour is Neil Higson, the landscape architect. We should get him involved. And so another coincidence, another serendipity takes place. And so Neil got involved, and he started designing the circle. And it got more elaborate. And it also moved its location. It got put onto where there was a ley line. Neil knew this. And when we went to consecrate this piece of land, and how this had come about by a man, semi-controversial in some ways, Roy Littleson, who'd spent time in the Hopi lands, but he'd been building medicine wheels, and he'd gone to South Africa to create one, putting the stones on the ground, getting the people, the bush people, the sand people to do one. And by coincidence, a South African gentleman was coming to Milton Keynes, and he mentioned Roy. And so Roy came over, and this is where the seed of the idea then germinated. And when this land was consecrated, we put a spike into the ground in the center of this ley line. And I kid you not, about 5 of us went like this. The earth moved, it tremored. It was like, whoa, whoa. Did you feel that? Did you see it? Was it just me? And of course, people were saying, yes, it wasn't just you. It was amazing. And I took my then girlfriend to have a look a few days later, and you could see a shimmering of like heat haze coming off the center of this circle. So we knew that we found the right spot and something magical was going to happen. So we got permission to build this from the Parks Trust. We got permission to have fires in a park. And we went, yes, to the quarry where the 2 chiefs had played their flutes all those years ago and sowed that particular seed. And you can't keep a nun who campaigns against nuclear weapons off a quarry where you're not supposed to stand, can you? So Martasan was up there, and we got to choose the stones. And the project began. But there was controversy at one moment, and it nearly collapsed because the Parks Trust said, no, you must use diggers and things. You can't put them in by hand. And of course, it's like, well, that kind of defeats the way we want to do this. And so we had a powwow, Neil, another chap, myself, and persuaded them to come up with something in the middle. Why can't we plant some of the stones ourselves? Appreciate the big ones, health and safety, but some of the smaller ones, with supervision, if you like, that we put those in ourselves. And so they agreed. And somewhere in that stone circle, I know where, are stones that might have 1 or 2 artifacts buried underneath them that Milkins, perhaps I shouldn't have said that might not be too happy about, but they are, as we would know, good things, good intention for good things. So there I am with the guys, and these are some of the people who are very pivotal in getting this whole thing going. Like I really know what I'm doing here, by the way. I just thought it was a good idea to look through there, as one does. Oh yeah, I think that's probably needs to move over there. And then time moved very, very quickly. This was January that the idea came about, okay? Literally just before I landed. So by September, we're going to have it completed. And we started to think about the opening ceremony. And the reason I've put this picture, I could go into clouds in it. I don't know if you can see up there, maybe if I point it, but there's a piece of paper. That is not a scratch on the photograph. We got talking, we got down to who's coming, and an argument came as to whether Prince Charles should come or not. And it was like, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then a gust of wind came from nowhere, and it blew the papers across the floor, except one, the one that had the Prince Charles thing on. And it sucked it up. I've never seen this before or since. It sucked it up and up and up and up and up and up. All the others are blown there. They're there, they're scattered around, right over the top of the temple until it disappeared. And because we were just watching it, and we thought, don't think Prince Charles is coming, is he? And so we moved to the wonderful day, and this is a real stone circle, by the way, folks. And I was thinking, I don't know how many years it takes before a stone circle can go in Julian Cope's book or anything. But one of the reasons coming to here today is come to Milton Keynes, come and see this wonderful stone circle. It's pretty unique because it's a cross between a medicine wheel and a Celtic standing stone circle. It's got an extra pair of gates in it to extensiate the ley line. So it's unusual. And the sun rose through the east gate on the day, it's like being in sort of Peru or something, isn't it? Machu Picchu. And there I am in that would be the west gate, just on the day of the actual ceremony. It was a marvellous day, and again, I am into clouds big time. In fact, a friend of mine, I at the time, I found it a little hard, said you were white cloud in a previous life. And I was trying to get away from sort of Native American connections at the time. And I douse, am I going to be a Apache? Hope so, Apache, want to be something like Mohawk. Yuchi. It's like, what? UG? They're not even recognised as a nation. And of course, my heart then and my wisdom said in, man, if you're a UG, that's sweet. It's sweet that they are not there. And it would go with the story that you were told by Lolene, which I'll save for another day. So this is Roy, and this is us getting the fire going, the day of this big ceremony. We had hundreds of people there. We had, came across the day, about 600-700 people came to this incredible ceremony. It was funny. We had Druids, we had Muslims, we had Christians, because this medicine wheel was designed to be all faith, no faith. And that's the way that it is today. And in fact, just afterwards, a little kid climbing all over it. It's a playground. It's a playground. Let's jump on the stones. That's what it is. And here it is today in its magnificence. It is quite something, quite spectacular. 107 stones. There's a needle stone, which is deliberately placed to extenuate the ley line. And there's an Africa stone too, a flat stone, which symbolises the connection with the bush people. And of course, there's fire. The Parks Trust have since tried to revoke that, by the way. But good old Deirdre keeps just ignoring their letters. She files them in the bin, and on we go. And as you can see, sometimes the fire, is that me? Or is that something going on? Because the ancestors are very important to me. And sometimes, I would say 1 in 2 times at that stone circle, the clouds seem to honour it. And we get some spectacular rainbows, angel clouds, all sorts of things. Or sometimes it's sunny where we are, and the clouds are all around. Now, after the stone circle was built, people started running away, and I love to travel. And I went to Machu Picchu, and I am a bit naughty from time to time, and I managed to stay there the night with an Australian lady. We hid. We got the people on this trip, Power Places, to tell the people, this is the old days, oh yes, they've gone. And I didn't want, I just wanted to hide. But June said, no, we have to ask. We have to ask. I was thinking, she's not going to say yes, is she? And she did. Okay. So we hid for 4 hours until the guards are gone, and I spent the night there in the ladies, I think the goddess temple. So I've apologized a few times for getting caught short in the night to the goddess, but it was something else. And so I started traveling, and then, coincidentally, the Happiness Project that had put on the event back in the day said, would you like to come and work for us? And I said, let me think about it. Yeah. Yeah. Right up my street. What could be better than talking about happiness and success in life? Working with some cool people. And here is the heart of the team that we had at the time. Robert Holden, the main person behind it, Ben Renshaw, Avril Carson, and my good self. And I had 7 years of absolute fun. Imagine waking up every day, what's your product? Happiness. And I gave Robert a massive gift, because at the time he was considering giving up public events. And it was like ludicrous to me. You can't do that. I can't give them up. He said, yeah, but we've peaked, the good days of Patch Adams and everything else, the numbers have dwindled. And I'm saying, no, that's just poor marketing. He said, well, prove it. So I started building the numbers up, and we got energy back and enthusiasm back. And then an email from Oprah Winfrey's show landed. Harpo Productions, never heard of them, Googled it. Oprah, knew she was big, didn't realize how big. And I picked up the phone straight through Chicago. Hi, Ian Lynch, business manager, Happiness Project, Robert Holden, Success Intelligence. How can I help? But I asked questions of him. What kind of show? Because I wanted a live show, and they'd seen Robert. And I said, well, you've got just the man. And Robert went over there, and it changed the course of his life completely. And my work was done in many ways. And coincidence. Robert Norton, musician, plays with Curved Air, the revamped Curved Air, was the first man I ever hugged. And he was the musician playing with the Happiness Project. And we became great friends. So we always laugh at that. My first hug. And at the end of each year, we used to, and this is a really great thing to do on the happiness front, we used to write down or get printed all the great things we'd done over the year and just look in amazement at what we'd done. But after 7 years or more since, this is probably now, we're up to, where are we now? 11 years since the building of the stone circle, people started to depart in many ways. Not least Handa, the wonderful monk who had carved, if you go to the temple at Milton Keynes, if you've seen it, the incredible carvings there, beautiful Japanese man, lovely man, very funny, gorgeous monk, died in an accident. And it was like an unravelling. At the time, I decided to take a punt. And we talk about signs and synchronicities. I missed things, but I jumped. I jumped without thinking, maybe. And I became the CEO of a startup company called Wobi. It's a great idea, World Birthday Connection. Every single day there's some 23, it's always growing, 24 million people share the same birthday as you. You can connect people through venues, you can message people, and the first thing I did was make a cup. I thought, we've got to make something, let's make a cup in celebration. And this was to be the launch of it. But unfortunately, the software failed, and it was really cool because you could add other events too. And in potentiality, it was an amazing thing. And I pitched to get the money we needed to turn this into a working product, and I failed, and I lost a lot of money. And so I went traveling. And I went to San Diego, and I met with Robert on a course, and I celebrated my birthday there. I met a woman who was from the place and had the birthday of the initials on my car. So that was kind of funny. And we traveled, and we went about, and I created this. I created a card deck for men. When I did it, I just noticed that if you went to the shops, the crystal shops, the New Age shops, there was lots of goddess cards, lots of cards, the divine feminine. It didn't seem to be anything about divine masculine or anything that seemed to be relative. And I'd also started to study restorative justice in Belfast. And I wanted something that was a bit more gritty. So some of the cards are things like bullshit, which men like to think they're pretty good at spotting, but of course they can also be quite good at doing it. And one or two other cards that can get you to reflect on things. So not just out there. I love to pick a card each day. Challenge, classic thing like that. So I created a card deck. I didn't know that I was healing my father wounds. I really didn't. I did not know it. Rights of Man, the image kind of sums it up for me, and so I created this. And I went to Arizona because I thought, me being me, I'm going to go and study and do my master's with the Navajo. And I sat in court there, and it's some experience, domestic violence, not just man, woman, husband, wife, or partners, grandkids beating up grandparents, all sorts of strange things. And a wonderful man called Jim Zion, I got his book. So I went out there and I studied with him. And this is Window Rock. This is the capital of the Navajo Nation, some 300,000 people. And I interviewed quite a lot of people, peacemakers, lovely traditional shaman, the Chief Justice. And I talked to young men, and do you know what? They wanted to go and protect the Navajo Nation by joining the US military. Because code talkers, if you understand it, in the Second World War, Navajo were used to run communications from ship to ship because the Japanese couldn't crack their language. Or, I don't know, I hope I haven't been rude there, but a really difficult language to master. Hoshe, I know it's never going to get it right, which is their way of life. The wheel fascinated me. The fact that it was a mix, like our world. The alcoholism, the depravity, the violence, women going missing, it's quite something. It breaks your heart in many ways, the loss of their language, and yet some amazing things. And I went back to Monument Valley, and I hung out with the Navajo, and I traveled around. This is me Don't know what's happening there, but the light decided to shine on me in Monument Valley. And I decided to go to the sacred canyon called Canyon de Chelly. Canyon de Chelly was a rainbow. I'd never seen anything like it before, a little rainbow just in one place on the corner of this canyon. This is Sacred Canyon. It has, within the canyon, the Anasazi, if you've ever heard of them. The missing people. There were probably Pueblos that were kicked out by the Navajo on their journey. So it's, it's human life in all its glory. But the Hopi was fascinating because of the connection, going back to Roy Littleson with the medicine wheel and his connection with the Hopi and how that came about. And I went driving through the Hopi Nation. It wasn't what I expected. Again, it's not romantic. Anyone read that book or know the book of the Hopi and the prophecies? I'm with my girlfriend. We're driving through the Hopi Nation. She says, we must stop at this art gallery. I thought, okay then. We stopped. We were walking around, and I meet this chap. He is the nephew of the bloke who wrote the book, or who illustrated it. I mean, how ridiculous is that? So bear that in mind today as well. Who's in this room? Who's in this room that's got something to tell you or share with you? He said, shouldn't really tell you, but there's going to be a rain dance tomorrow. And then puts the Kachina outfits on and does this dance. No photographs allowed. And I went along, and it was a clear blue Arizona sky, not a cloud in sight, and a cloud appeared, and it rained. It rained. And it was just ridiculous, to say the least, and the best use of that word. But I didn't have any mementos, and I was going to see the Chief Justice of the Navajo, who was just retiring, and she was clearing out her office. And she said, just clearing out my office, would you like this? And I said, yeah, I would actually. A Kachina doll. I didn't know that I was basically breaking down, actually. I went mad. I went running around the world. I partied. I went to Woodstock. What a pilgrimage. That's a proper pilgrimage, to stand in the bowl and just, be at the happening. And I went to Monaco, played around. I spent a lot of money, as well as going to doing something more, shall we say, soul-centered, Great Pyramid of Giza, meditating for an hour in there. But I was breaking down. And 2 years ago, I nearly took my life. I hadn't realized with that car image, I was going to drive my car off the road. I'd lost my money, spent it, sort of George Best style. Rest I just wasted. And I'd lost my partner. She upped and gone, and I didn't see any meaning or hope going forward. This woman saved my life. She's my sister, my eldest sister, carrying the Olympic torch. When I realized how scared she was, when she understood how desperate I was, I couldn't do it, and I worked with her to come back. Since then, I've been coming back in a way. This is in Ireland. I love it. The fact that in Ireland, I've been to the famine museum, so-called Skibbereen, and this is remarkable. I hope you can read this. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But the Choctaw Nation, who were forced off their lands, donated money to the Irish during the famine, when the British government were not. It's something like 170 quid or pounds that they gave towards the famine. I mean, it's remarkable, isn't it? Humans, connection. I can't believe I created a fire circle. I thought I'd never create something again, but fires attract me. In coming back from the dark side, I started to create my own models around what success and happiness are in life. was getting my heart back again, and I was able to then start to coach again, and I created some. This is some work in progress, using the medicine wheel to help people walk around so you can make better decisions than maybe I'd made. You know, just seeing if things are in balance. And of course, I also went back to the Stone Circle again after several years, because I moved away. I moved from Milton Keynes down to London. And of course, it invigorated me. So, not quite ready to end the presentation, but I really would love to engage with you. I promised I would. So I just want to give you, I think I've got about 5 or 6 minutes left maybe. I'd just like you to take 1 minute or so and turn to your partner, whoever's sat next to you. Just think about one and just share one coincidence that changed your life, and just see what you come up with. One synchronicity that changed your life. Because, and I'll give you the spice of this talk. Now you can understand why I wasn't sure whether I was ever going to do this. I never thought I would stand in front of an audience again. And indeed, when I was asked by Andy, I didn't have any confidence at that time to do anything with it. I had no, my self-worth hadn't really come back again. And so I hope I've shared some decent things here, but I want to hear from you. So please, 1 minute, just 1 minute. Now, if you can, if you can't, it's fine. But just to share something, because I want to hear something. There's going to be some amazing ones in the room. 1 minute, starting now. Just 1 minute. Another sort of 15 to 20 seconds, please. And thank you. And if I could just bring your attention back. I know these are conversations that you could carry on for ages, and indeed this is the kind of work I absolutely love doing, and things like the Happiness Project, real conversations that enable us to share. And I maybe another time a workshop on happiness. Come on, maybe sometime. Is there anybody who's got anything extraordinary that they would just love to share with us about a coincidence? Yes, that lady over here. I don't know if we need a microphone.
Thank you. That was very inspiring and so positive for all what you said. I just want to say quickly, I am Polish, if anyone is wondering where my accent is from. And after Brexit referendum, I felt literally heartbroken and homeless, because from the very first day I arrived to this country, I felt I am in the right place at the right time. And in that moment on Wednesday morning when I woke up, everything was ruined. I just felt like I'm in a big hole, and I really didn't know. I felt not wanted. I just felt, as I said, heartbroken and homeless. Even if I still had a job, I just lost kind of purpose and spiritual home. And I was just ending my work. I work with disabled person, and I was packing to go back home. And the first time in the little town in Surrey, on the front of me, when I was going to get to the train on the platform, there was a young boy carrying a skateboard under his arm, and he suddenly leaned down in front of me and picked a bee from the ground and put it on the grass, and then looked around like he was ashamed doing such a thing. And he saw me, and I was, oh my God, you made my day. And then I got on a train, and I had to change the train. And the first time ever, as I've been traveling so long, a British man got my suitcase, helping me to get off the train. And I was, that's weird, but that feels nice. And then it happened again when I was carrying my suitcase up the stairs. Again, a British man took my suitcase and thought, oh, it looks like you are struggling. These are the words. And at first I wanted to hold on because no one ever carries my suitcase. And I let him to carry this up the stairs. And he did. And I was just shaking in this moment because this suddenly I started understanding like messages. And I just started feeling grounded again. And I can only say thank you, Britain, for adopting me.
I'd just like to really end with, I'd love to hear more conversations, and thank you so much for what you've just shared with us. It's really beautiful. Real conversations. In our world of AI and changing world, it's important to talk to one another, and especially a community like this that is open-minded and kind-hearted. It can save someone's life. It literally can. The path is ongoing, and it's for us to tread as anything else. And new beginnings happening from the moment we step out of our chair today. Thank you all for listening to my talk. It's some synchronicities, some signs, some patterns, the good ones, the bad ones, the ugly ones, but it's all part of life. And may you all be blessed in what you do in the days to come. Thank you very much indeed.